Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. It's good to have you here, where we take life's chaos, shake it up with some Stoic wisdom, and walk away feeling like we've just leveled up. Today's topic? Oh, it's juicy. Stop talking to them, and their ego will collapse. Yep, that's right. We're diving into how your silence can make their ego crumble faster than a cookie under pressure. Now, before we get into the good stuff, do me a quick favor. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on those notifications. Because trust me, you don't want to miss the fire we're dropping here. And if you've been here before, you already know, we don't just talk about it, we live it. So, buckle up. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you're screaming into the void? You're putting in all this effort, trying to explain yourself, trying to fix things, trying to matter, and all you get back is nothing, silence from their side. Or worse, a reaction that makes you feel like you're the problem. Here's the hard truth. Sometimes, the only way to win the game is to stop playing it. Stop talking to them. Stop feeding their ego. Let the silence do the talking. And let me tell you, silence hits harder than any comeback ever could. Picture this. You're a calm, collected thunderstorm rolling in. You don't announce yourself with a big speech. You don't plead, beg, or explain. You just show up, quiet and powerful. That's the kind of energy we're channeling today. No words, just impact. When you stop talking, it's like taking the batteries out of their ego-powered remote control. They don't know what to do. Their confidence? Shaky. Their assumptions? Questioned. And their ego? Oh, it starts cracking like an old mirror. Here's where we hit hard. What's holding you back from cutting them off? Fear, right? Fear that they'll forget you. Fear that they'll move on. Fear that your silence will make you invisible. Well, let me tell you something. Fear is a liar. Fear wants you to keep talking, keep engaging, keep giving them the attention they don't deserve. But you're better than that. Fear doesn't own you. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Your silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. It's choosing power over fear. It's choosing you. Let's anchor this moment with a declaration. Write this in the comments. I choose silence to reclaim my power. Go ahead, say it, type it, own it. Because today, we're not just talking about being strong, we're becoming unshakable. Now, let me warn you, this isn't easy. Choosing silence takes courage. It's going to feel uncomfortable at first. You're going to want to explain yourself, to react, to fill the awkward silence with something, anything. But don't. Stay tight. Because what's coming next is the real deal. In this video, we're breaking down exactly why your silence is their kryptonite. We'll dive into how their ego feeds on your attention. How stopping communication flips the entire power dynamic, and why they'll start questioning everything when you say nothing at all. So grab a coffee, lean in, and get ready to learn how to make your silence their loudest wake-up call. Let's dive in. Number 1. Why talking feels safe but isn't helping. Let's start with something we've all done, maybe even yesterday. Someone pulls away, gives you the silent treatment, or doesn't respond the way you hoped. And what's the first thing you do? You start talking. You explain yourself. You clarify what you really meant. You replay the conversation in your head, craft the perfect text, and hit send, convinced this will solve everything. But here's the kicker. It doesn't. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Sure, you're doing something, but it's not the something that helps. Talking feels safe, doesn't it? It's like wrapping yourself in a cozy blanket of words, hoping they'll shield you from rejection, misunderstanding, or awkward silence. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That blanket is riddled with holes. It doesn't protect you. It just gives you the illusion of control. And let me tell you, illusions are tricky things. They make you feel secure while keeping you stuck in the same cycle. Why? Because talking, over-explaining and oversharing aren't about connection, they're about fear. Let's call it what it is. When you keep talking, you're not fighting for clarity, you're fighting against silence. And silence? Oh, silence is terrifying. It's the great unknown. When you stop talking, you have to sit with yourself, with your thoughts, with your doubts. And isn't that what we're really running from? Not them, not their reactions, but the quiet voice in our own head asking, "What if I'm not enough?" But here's where we flip the script. What if silence isn't something to fear? What if it's not an enemy, but an ally? Imagine this. You're on a sinking boat, and water is rushing in faster than you can bail it out. Instead of scrambling with a leaky bucket, what if you stepped back and looked for a lifeboat? Silence is that lifeboat. It's the thing that gets you out of the storm instead of keeping you stuck in it. I know what you're thinking. But if I stop talking, won't they think I don't care? Won't they think I'm giving up? Here's the twist. They're already thinking something, whether you talk or not. People interpret what they want to interpret. If they're determined to misunderstand you, no amount of words will change that. In fact, the more you talk, the more ammunition you give them to twist your words. Silence, on the other hand, leaves them with nothing but their own thoughts. And that's where the magic happens. Now, let's get real about why this is so hard. Talking gives you a sense of control, even if it's false. It feels like action, like progress. But silence? Silence feels like surrender. And surrender is scary because it forces you to let go of outcomes. It's admitting that you can't control how they think, feel, or respond. And let's be honest, that's tough. We've all been conditioned to believe that if we just say the right thing, do the right thing, or explain ourselves enough, we can fix any situation. But that's a lie. A comforting, well-packaged lie. And today, we're breaking it. Here's what they won't tell you. Silence isn't about giving up. It's about stepping up. It's about saying, I don't need to fill this space with words to prove my worth. It's about reclaiming your energy and redirecting it towards something that actually serves you. Marcus Aurelius put it perfectly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Talking is trying to control the uncontrollable. Silence is realizing that the only thing you can control is yourself. And let's talk about them for a second. The ones you're so afraid will misinterpret your silence. Do you know what they'll think? They'll think, why aren't they reacting? Why aren't they explaining? What's going on? And that's not manipulation. That's just human nature. People are used to others trying to fill the void. When you don't, it forces them to stop and take notice. Not because you're playing games, but because you're breaking the pattern. And breaking patterns? That's how you change dynamics. Here's a metaphor for you. Silence is like stepping out of a dance. You've been spinning around the floor, following their lead, trying to keep up with the rhythm they set. But the moment you stop, the music changes. They're left dancing alone, suddenly aware of the space you used to fill. And you're standing at the edge of the room, finally catching your breath, realizing you don't need to dance to their tune anymore. But let's not sugarcoat this. It's going to feel weird at first. You'll have moments where your fingers itch to text, where your brain screams, "Say something." You'll worry about what they're thinking, about whether they're moving on without you, about whether your silence is making things worse. But here's the thing, it's not your job to manage their thoughts. It's your job to manage your own peace. When you stop talking, you give yourself the gift of perspective. You step back and see the bigger picture. You start to realize that their opinion of you doesn't define you. Their reaction doesn't diminish your worth. And their silence? It's not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their own struggles. Silence gives you clarity. It's the pause that lets you ask yourself, is this even worth my energy anymore? Let's wrap this up with something powerful. Silence isn't weakness, it's strength. It's saying, I respect myself enough to stop trying to explain who I am to someone who doesn't see it. And if that doesn't hit hard, I don't know what will. Now, let's anchor this moment with an affirmation. Write this in the comments. I choose silence. That's it. Short, simple, powerful. Say it, type it, feel it. Let it be your declaration, not just to the world, but to yourself. Show them you're not playing their games anymore. Show yourself you're stronger than the need to explain. And show the universe that you've chosen peace over noise. Let those 3 words be your line in the sand. Go ahead, type it out. Let's make it real. And here's the best part. This is just the beginning. In the next section, we're tackling something that holds so many of us back. The fear of feeling like the bad guy. How do you stop talking without carrying guilt or questioning yourself? How do you set boundaries without feeling like you're being cold or mean? Stay tight, because what's coming next will completely shift how you see silence. Not as something cruel, but as an act of self-respect and empowerment. Let's keep going. Number 2. How to stop talking without feeling like a villain. Let's be real. Choosing silence over endless explanations feels strange, maybe even a little harsh. You stop replying to texts, and suddenly your brain goes into overdrive, whispering, "Am I being rude? What if they think I'm the bad guy here?" Here's the plot twist you didn't see coming. You're not. You're not being rude, and you're certainly not the villain of this story. You're just someone who finally realized that over-explaining yourself doesn't buy peace, it rents stress. And let's be honest, the landlord you're overthinking is charging way too much. Here's where we start to untangle this guilt knot. Silence isn't about ghosting, being cold, or playing games. It's about boundaries. It's about saying, hey, I deserve peace and I'm not negotiating that. And yes, it's going to feel weird at first, especially if you're used to trying to smooth things over or make everyone else feel comfortable. But let's think of silence in a different way. It's like hitting the reset button on a chaotic playlist. Instead of adding more noise, you're pausing to create space for clarity. Here's a metaphor for you. Imagine you're carrying a bucket filled with water. Every time you talk, explain, or try to convince someone of your perspective, you're scooping water out with a spoon, trying to empty the bucket. But guess what? The bucket has holes. No matter how much you scoop, it's never going to be enough. Silence, on the other hand, is like setting the bucket down entirely. It's not your job to fix their perception of you, to patch the holes, or to keep pouring yourself into something that doesn't hold water. Still feeling guilty? Let's shift gears. Marcus Aurelius, the OG of Stoic wisdom, said it best. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When you choose silence, you're not controlling their reaction, you're controlling your peace. And if they interpret your silence as cold or dismissive, that's not your burden to carry. You're not being mean. You're setting a standard for how you deserve to be treated. Silence isn't rejection, it's self-respect. But here's the catch. Your brain is going to fight you on this. It's going to scream things like, what if they think I don't care? What if they talk about me behind my back? What if I'm burning a bridge? Let's address that last one. Burning a bridge. Sometimes that's exactly what you need to do. Not out of spite, but because the bridge led to a place that drained you. And here's the thing about burned bridges. They light the way forward. Let's talk about kindness for a second. Because silence, when done intentionally, is one of the kindest things you can do, not just for yourself, but for them too. When you stop talking, you're giving them the gift of space. You're allowing them to reflect on their own actions instead of constantly reacting to yours. You're stepping out of the way so they can see themselves clearly. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. Now, I'm not saying silence is easy. It's uncomfortable. It's going to make you question yourself, especially if you're someone who's used to fixing, pleasing, or keeping the peace. But here's the truth. Silence is calm, not cruel. It's assertive, not aggressive. And most importantly, it's powerful. It says, I don't need to explain myself to be understood. Let me give you another metaphor. Silence is like being a lighthouse. You don't chase ships to guide them. You stand still, grounded, and let your light speak for itself. You're not being mean to the ships that drift away. You're just not chasing them into the storm. Your silence is your strength, your grounding, your light. If you're still feeling like the villain, ask yourself this. Why do I feel guilty for protecting my peace? Why do I think I owe an explanation to someone who doesn't respect my boundaries? This isn't about them, it's about you. And if choosing yourself makes you feel like the bad guy, maybe it's time to rewrite the story you've been telling yourself. Now, let's anchor this moment with an affirmation. Write this in the comments. I choose silence because I respect myself. That's it. Short, sweet, and straight to the point. Say it, type it, and let it sink in. Show the world that your silence isn't about shutting people out. It's about showing yourself the love and respect you've been giving away too easily. Let them wonder, let them reflect, and let yourself thrive. And here's the best part. This is just the beginning. What's coming next? We're going to explore how your silence not only protects your peace, but completely shifts the dynamic in ways you never imagined. Stay tight, because this is where things get real. Number 3. The emotional detox. What happens when you stop talking? Let's get real. Your brain. It's a drama hoarder. Every time you overthink, overtalk, or try to dissect that one weird text they sent 3 weeks ago, you're basically shoving junk into an already overflowing closet. It's that closet you know you should clean, but instead, you just keep stuffing things in and praying the door doesn't pop open. And when it does, chaos. Everything spills out, and suddenly, you're drowning in your own mess. Now, imagine what happens when you stop talking, when you stop feeding the chaos. It's like finally pulling everything out of that mental closet, looking at each piece of emotional baggage and saying, why the hell have I been holding on to this? Silence is your emotional detox. It's that deep clean you didn't know you needed, but absolutely deserve. And yeah, it's uncomfortable at first. Detoxes always are. But let's be honest, aren't you tired of carrying all that noise? Here's the thing. When you're constantly talking, over-explaining, or just trying to fill the silence, you're not solving anything. You're just adding to the clutter. You're giving your emotions more fuel, more airtime, more room to spiral. But when you go quiet, that's when the real magic happens. Silence doesn't just stop the noise, It forces you to deal with what's underneath it. And yeah, that might sound scary. But what's scarier, facing it or living in it forever? Picture this. Silence is like walking into an empty room after a storm. At first, it feels eerie. The calm is almost too much. But then you realize, for the first time in ages, you can actually see the room. You notice the sunlight coming through the windows. You feel the air on your skin. And you think, why was I so afraid of this? That's what silence does. It clears the storm. It doesn't make everything perfect, but it gives you a chance to see what's really going on. Let me hit you with some Stoic wisdom, because you know, Marcus Aurelius always knew what's up. He said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's exactly what happens when you stop talking. You realize that all the noise, the arguments, the overthinking, the urge to explain yourself, isn't about them. It's about you. It's about the stories you've been telling yourself and the chaos you've been clinging to. Silence doesn't just help you see it, it helps you rewrite it. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. It's not easy. Going quiet feels weird. It's like quitting caffeine. At first, you're jittery, restless, and wondering why you ever thought this was a good idea. Your brain will scream things like, "This is awkward, say something, fix it." But here's the truth. You don't need to fix anything. You just need to sit with it. Because the discomfort isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're finally doing something different. And let's talk about them for a second. The people you're worried will misunderstand your silence. Here's what's actually happening. While you're detoxing your emotions, they're left to sit with theirs. That's not mean. That's fair. Your silence isn't about punishing them, it's about protecting you. And if they can't handle that, that's their detox to deal with, not yours. Here's another way to think about it. Silence is like fasting for your soul. When you stop consuming all the drama, the arguments, and the endless noise, your system resets. You start to feel lighter, clearer, more in tune with what actually matters. You stop reacting to every little thing, and instead you start choosing where to put your energy. And let me tell you, when you finally stop pouring your energy into things that drain you, you'll be amazed at how much you have left for yourself. So, what happens when you stop talking? At first, it feels like you're losing control, but then you realize you never had control to begin with. Not over them, not over their reactions, and definitely not over their ego. What you do have control over is your peace. And silence? That's the doorway to finding it. Now, let's lock this in with an affirmation. Write this in the comments. I choose silence for my clarity. That's it. No overthinking, no over-explaining. Just a simple declaration that you're ready to let go of the noise and embrace the stillness. Say it, type it, own it. Show yourself that you're ready to detox the drama and focus on what actually matters, your peace. Number 4, what they'll notice when you stop talking. Let's be honest, when you stop talking, they'll notice. Oh, they'll definitely notice. Not because you're out here trying to be petty or mysterious, but because silence is loud. It shakes things up in a way words never could. You've been the one filling the gaps, keeping the conversation alive, pouring out your energy like it's a bottomless well. But when you stop, when you pull back and let the silence settle, that's when they start to feel it. That's when they realize the difference between noise and presence. And trust me, presence is where the magic happens. Imagine this. You've been the Wi-Fi of their emotional world, always connected, always available, always keeping things running. But one day, the signal goes out. At first, they might act like they don't care. "Oh, I didn't even notice," they'll say. But give it a little time, and suddenly they're checking the router, wondering why everything feels so off. That's what your silence does. It's not about making them miss you. It's about making them notice what your energy brought to the table. Here's the twist, though. They don't just notice the absence. They notice the shift. When you stop talking, you're not just removing your words. You're removing your availability, your emotional labor, your willingness to keep things afloat. And that's a game changer. They start to realize that all the things they took for granted, your patience, your kindness, your presence, weren't just there. You were making a choice to give those things, and now you're making a different one. But let's not sugarcoat this. At first, they'll try to act like nothing's changed. People with big egos or a sense of entitlement love to play it cool. They might even double down, thinking your silence is just another move in a game they believe they're winning. And here's where it gets interesting. Silence doesn't just mess with their perception. It forces them to face their own noise. Without your words filling the space, they're left with their own thoughts. And let me tell you, that's not always a comfortable place for them to be. Here's a little Stoic gem for you. Marcus Aurelius said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Your silence isn't happening to them, it's happening for you. You're reclaiming your energy, your peace, and your priorities. And if they're left reacting to that silence, that's their journey, not yours. Now let's talk about what they might notice. They'll notice the obvious things first. The lack of texts, the unanswered calls, the moments you used to fill with reassurance or explanations. But then they'll notice the deeper stuff. They'll notice that you're not chasing, not bending over backward, not making them the center of your world. And here's where it gets really interesting. They'll start to question why. Not just why you stopped talking, but why they didn't appreciate it when you were. Think of your silence like a mirror. It reflects their actions back to them in a way your words never could. When you were talking, they could ignore the message because they were too busy focusing on the noise. But silence? Silence strips away the distractions and forces them to face the reality of their own behavior. Maybe they'll see the cracks. Maybe they won't. Either way, it's not your problem anymore. Here's the best part. By the time they notice, you'll be too busy thriving to care. Seriously, the energy you used to spend on overthinking, overtalking, and overgiving, it's now fueling your own growth. While they're sitting there wondering why things feel different, you're out there living your best life, rediscovering who you are without their expectations hanging over you. And that shift? That's where the real magic is. Let's break down what this means for you. Stopping the noise doesn't just change the dynamic, it changes you. You start to realize that your worth isn't tied to their validation, their attention, or their approval. You don't need to be the fixer, the peacemaker, or the one who always shows up. You can show up for yourself instead. And when you do, you become unshakable. Now, here's where the story takes an even better turn. When they notice the shift, they'll have a choice. They can either reflect and grow, or they can stay stuck in their patterns. Either way, you've already won. Because your silence isn't about teaching them a lesson, it's about choosing your peace over their chaos. Let's lock this in with an affirmation. Write this in the comments. I choose peace over noise. Go ahead, say it, type it, feel it. Let those words remind you that your silence isn't about playing games. It's about reclaiming your power. Show yourself that you don't need to fill the gaps to be valuable. Show the world that your presence is a choice, not an obligation. And if they notice, Great. If they don't, even better, because your peace isn't up for negotiation. Number 5. The ultimate plot twist. What if they do notice and still don't care? So let's say you've done it. You stopped talking, you pulled back, reclaimed your energy, and embraced the power of silence. And now the big moment comes, and their reaction is crickets. Nothing. Nada. Zero acknowledgement. You're sitting there like, wait, what? Where's the regret? The overthinking? The dramatic text at 3 a.m.? But nope. It's like they didn't even notice. Here's where the gut check happens. At first, it stings, right? You're human after all. It's hard not to take it personally. You think, does my absence mean nothing to them? Was I really that forgettable? But hold up. Before you spiral, let's flip the narrative. Their indifference isn't your heartbreak. It's your freedom. Because their lack of reaction? That's the loudest answer you'll ever get. Let's unpack this. When someone doesn't notice your silence, it's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their priorities. Maybe they're too distracted, too self-absorbed, or too emotionally unavailable to register what's happening. And honestly, that's not your burden to carry. Their inability to notice doesn't diminish your value. It highlights their inability to appreciate it. Think of it like this. You're a lighthouse, standing tall and steady, shining your light. But if they're busy staring at the waves or chasing after other ships, that's on them. Your light doesn't lose its power just because they're too preoccupied to see it. Your worth isn't tied to their attention. It's tied to your presence, your energy, and your ability to stand firm even when they don't notice. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. It still hurts. Of course it does. You invested time, energy, and emotions into this person, and now it feels like all of that went unnoticed. But here's the thing. You didn't go silent for them. You went silent for you. You didn't pull back to teach them a lesson or get a reaction. You did it to reclaim your peace. And if their indifference is the price of your freedom, isn't that worth it? Let me hit you with a Stoic perspective here. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." In other words, their lack of reaction doesn't hurt you unless you let it. It's all about the story you tell yourself. Are you telling yourself that their indifference means you don't matter? Or are you telling yourself that their indifference frees you from the chains of seeking their validation? Let's flip the script even more. What if their lack of reaction is the ultimate plot twist? What if it's exactly what you needed to realize, that you were giving too much to someone who gave too little in return? What if it's the wake-up call that sets you on a path toward people who actually see your value without you having to shout it from the rooftops? Here's a little metaphor to drive it home. Imagine you're holding a beautifully wrapped gift. It's full of your energy, your kindness, your attention, everything you bring to a relationship. You hold it out, waiting for them to take it, and they just walk away. At first, it stings. But then you realize, wait a minute, this gift is still mine. They didn't take it, so I still have all of this to give to someone who actually appreciates it, or better yet, to myself. That's the beauty of their indifference. It's a mirror, showing you exactly where you stand in their life. And if the reflection isn't what you hoped for, that's not a reason to shrink. It's a reason to stand taller. Their reaction, or lack thereof, doesn't define you. It defines them. Here's the kicker. By the time they realize your silence wasn't just a phase, you'll be too busy thriving to care. Because let's be real, you didn't stop talking to get their attention. You stop talking to get your power back. And that power, it's yours to keep, no matter what they do or don't do. Let's anchor this with an affirmation. Write this in the comments. Their indifference is my freedom. Say it, type it, own it. Let those words remind you that your worth isn't tied to their reaction. You're free to shine, free to grow, free to focus on the people who actually deserve your energy. Show yourself that their silence isn't a loss. It's a gift. And show the world that your peace doesn't depend on anyone but you. Number 6. Why their next move doesn't matter, and yours does. Let's be real. When you stop talking, the first thing your brain wants to know is, what's their next move? Will they text? Will they call? Will they post something cryptic on social media just to mess with your head? The suspense is maddening, isn't it? But here's the ultimate truth bomb. Their next move doesn't matter at all, not even a little. What matters, what really matters, is what you do next. Because let's face it, waiting for someone else to act is like sitting on a roller coaster that's stuck at the top of the drop. You're not going anywhere, and the only thing you're doing is driving yourself nuts. Here's the deal. When you focus on their next move, you give them all the power. It's like handing over the keys to your peace of mind and saying, "Here, take these. Feel free to drive me straight into the overthinking zone." And let me ask you this. When has obsessing over someone else's actions ever made you feel better? Spoiler alert, never. It only keeps you stuck in the same old loop, replaying the same old story, hoping for a different ending. But guess what? You're the author of this story, not them. You get to decide what happens next, and it starts with focusing on your own move. Now, I get it. It's easier said than done. You're probably thinking, but what if they reach out? What if they don't? What does it mean? Here's a revolutionary idea. It doesn't mean anything unless you let it. Their reaction, or lack thereof, isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their priorities, their emotional bandwidth, and their ability, or inability, to value what you bring to the table. And you don't have time to sit around decoding their actions like some kind of emotional cryptographer. You've got bigger things to do. Think of it this way. Their next move is like a coin toss. It's random, unpredictable, and completely out of your control. You can't influence whether they reach out or not, but you can decide how you respond, or if you respond at all. And that's where your power lies. When you shift your focus from their actions to your own, you take the narrative back into your hands. You stop reacting to them, and you start creating the life you actually want. Let me throw a little Stoic wisdom at you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Their next move? That's an outside event. Your response? That's where the strength is. Whether they reach out or stay silent, you have the power to choose what happens next. And if that choice involves stepping into your own peace and thriving like never before, then congratulations. You've already won. Here's a metaphor for you. Imagine you're in a chess game. You've just made a move, and now you're sitting there staring at the board, waiting for your opponent. You're so focused on what they'll do next that you don't even notice the other opportunities on the board, the moves you could be making right now. That's what happens when you fixate on their actions. You miss the chance to make your own next move, the one that changes the entire game. But let's not sugarcoat this. Shifting your focus isn't easy. It takes effort to stop refreshing your messages or stalking their Instagram for clues. It takes discipline to remind yourself that their silence isn't a verdict on your value. But here's the thing, it's worth it. Every time you choose to focus on yourself instead of them, you're reclaiming a little more of your power. And over time, that adds up to a version of you who doesn't just survive without their validation, you thrive without it. So, what should your next move be? Simple. Focus on you. Pour that energy into things that light you up. Start that project you've been putting off. Dive into your hobbies. Strengthen your relationships with people who do value you. When you stop orbiting around someone else's actions, you create a life that revolves around your own joy, peace, and growth. And here's the kicker. When you're busy living your best life, their next move becomes irrelevant. Whether they reach out or not, you'll be too busy thriving to care. Let's lock this in with an affirmation. Write this in the comments. My next move is my power. Say it, type it, own it. Let it remind you that you're not here to wait, you're here to rise. Show yourself that you're the one steering this ship. Show the world that your story isn't about waiting for someone else to act. It's about you stepping into your greatness. And this is just the beginning. What's coming next? We'll dive into why your silence doesn't just change the game. It makes you unforgettable. Stay tight, because things are about to get even more powerful. Number 7. The beginning of your evolution. Let's get one thing straight. Your silence isn't the end of anything. It's not the closing act, the final curtain, or some dramatic goodbye. No, it's the start of something bigger, your evolution. This is the moment where you stop pouring your energy into people who don't see it, stop chasing after answers you don't need, and start stepping into the version of yourself that doesn't just survive, they thrive. Think of it like this. You've been a caterpillar, crawling along, doing all the work, carrying the weight of every misunderstanding, every over-explanation, every second-guessing thought. But now you've wrapped yourself in silence. And while the world might see that as withdrawal, you know the truth. You're in your cocoon. You're transforming. This is your evolution. And when you emerge, you're not just going to fly, you're going to soar. Here's the kicker. Silence isn't just about them. It's about you. It's about clearing out the noise, the doubts, and the constant need for validation. It's about making room for the things that actually matter, your growth, your peace, your happiness. And yeah, at first it feels uncomfortable. Silence forces you to sit with yourself, to confront the things you've been avoiding. But that's where the magic is. Growth never happens in comfort zones, and silence is the ultimate nudge out of yours. Let me hit you with some Stoic wisdom because, you know, Marcus Aurelius is basically the life coach we all need. He said, "Dwell on the beauty of life, watch the stars, and see yourself running with them." Your silence, that's your chance to dwell on your own beauty, your potential, your strength, your ability to rise above the noise. It's not about shrinking back, it's about stepping into the light. And here's the plot twist. While you're evolving, they're noticing. Maybe not right away, maybe not in the way you imagined, but trust me, they're feeling the shift. Because your silence doesn't just create absence, it creates presence. It says, "I'm not here to play small anymore." And when they see you rising, they'll realize the value of what they lost. But by then, you'll be too busy evolving to care. So, where do you go from here? Forward. Always forward. Silence isn't the destination, it's the bridge. It's the space between who you were and who you're becoming, and the person you're becoming. They don't chase, they don't explain, and they don't settle. They build, they grow, and they lead with unshakable confidence. Let's anchor this moment with an affirmation. Write this in the comments. This is my evolution. Say it, type it, own it. Let the world see it. Let yourself feel it. Because this isn't just the beginning of your silence, it's the beginning of your greatness. And trust me, what comes next is nothing short of unstoppable. And there you have it, folks. Your silence isn't the end of a story. It's the beginning of your evolution. It's where you stop chasing, stop explaining, and stop pouring your energy into places it doesn't belong. Instead, you focus on growth, clarity, and becoming the version of yourself that doesn't just wait for change. They create it. Remember, silence isn't about them. It's about you. It's not a strategy or a game. It's a declaration of self-respect. When you step back, you're not just protecting your peace, you're claiming your power. And the best part? By the time they notice, you'll be too busy thriving to care. Now, let's make this personal. Drop this in the comments. I am evolving. Let it be your final word, your mic drop moment. Say it, type it, own it. Let the world know that you're not here to stay the same. You're here to rise. If this message resonated with you, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more empowering insights, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Together, we can create a movement of clarity, strength, and growth. Until next time, keep evolving. You've got this.